Hi, I'm Bob Eubanks, and you're watching Taped with Rabbi Doug. I mean, doesn't everybody?
We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug on your TV tonight. But Daddy, I want to watch Monday Night Football.
Forget about Monday Night Football. There's no other thing we're going to watch on Monday but Rabbi Doug.
Yeah, Rabbi Doug on TV tonight. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. Oh, everybody talk about Doug.
Shalom and welcome to Taped with Rabbi Doug. Glad you could be with us today. I am so honored to welcome back attorney Jeffrey Leving. Welcome back to the show, Jeffrey.
My pleasure.
And with him today is Arthur Kallow. Art, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
A pleasure to have you with us. Everyone knows Jeffrey Leving from television, from radio, from his reputation of being one of the most well-known and one of the most successful in his business attorneys in the Chicago area, but he works out of everywhere, of course. And Art is his associate, and they are in a firm together with others, and they specialize, for those who don't know, in taking care of father's rights, dad's rights, in divorce and custody, and that's their specialty, but they do other stuff too, of course. So I just want to tell a little bit about these two gentlemen for those who don't know them. Jeffrey M. Leving has been named one of America's best lawyers by Forbes Radio and selected by his peers as one of Illinois' top attorneys. He's an international leader in advocating for fathers' rights in the courtroom among politicians and policymakers with legislative initiatives, and his books that he has written. He is certainly well known. He is a very famous face on media and has been doing this for a long time. And if you haven't seen him on our show before, just check out www.tvrabbi.com, where you can see Jeffrey on the first time he was in the studio with me. Today, Art Kallow has represented hundreds of clients throughout the decades, including cases which involve complex jury trials, contested custody and visitation, child support, paternity, intricate financial issues. In addition, he's handled sophisticated appeals in state and federal courts. He's been before the Illinois Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals, and he's just very, very well known. As a matter of fact, I want you to know that he is considered to be one of the top, if not the most successful and best litigators in the state of Illinois, and he is certainly renowned as well, and part of the same firm. And I want to welcome you both to the show. And Jeffrey, you look great, first of all. It's great to see you. Tell me, what has changed in the last, I think we were on TV together about 4 years ago. What has changed in the last 4 years in the laws, in the way the courts handle the rights of parents and their children, and custody battles and divorce things? What has changed in the way things are in the last 4 years that we might not have talked about 4 years ago?
Well, the biggest change is litigating during the pandemic and post-pandemic. And even now, there are cases we handle where we're handling cases by Zoom, not even going into a courtroom. There was one case I handled by Zoom where the judge wasn't there, the opposing attorney wasn't there. I was in my conference room handling the case with attorney Jimmy Egler and our client.
Also one of your associates.
Exactly, attorney Jimmy Egler. And the opposing party, when she was testifying, it seemed that she was looking to her side while she was testifying, but we weren't in a courtroom, so I was wondering, was somebody telling her or indicating what her responses should be to the questioning? So the problem with the Zoom hearings and court dates, it's more difficult for judges to control the testimony.
The atmosphere around it.
Exactly. But that's the world we're in.
All right, very good.
I had a case recently by Zoom, and during the middle of the case, a cat came and sat on the opposing attorney's shoulder, because she was at home, probably in her dining room. So there are some amusing things that happen, but there's some very serious things that happen too. There's a case, I think it was in Michigan, where during the middle of the case, there was a knock on the door, and the witness went to get the door, and the sheriff was there to arrest the witness for something. So
Oh my gosh.
there's any number of things that we have to be prepared for, but it's a lot different than it had been for a couple hundred years before.
Sure, sure. Art, this is your first time on our show, and I want to find a little bit about you. First of all, where did you go to law school?
I went to Northwestern.
You went to Northwestern, and where did you go to undergraduate?
Northwestern.
Oh, you're a Chicago. You're a
Yes, I
Chicago
am.
person for a long time. So tell me, how did you get into this field of law? What was your introduction to divorce and child custody battles and so on and so forth, and father's rights? What brought you into that before you met Jeffrey?
Well, at first I was an oil and gas lawyer, and I was working in Washington on some very complicated regulatory matters. And I realized I really wasn't enjoying it because I didn't have any real clients. I just had one client, a large pipeline. And I wanted to reach out to do something that I knew I would have litigation. And this is what appealed to me at first about it. And after doing it for several years, I realized that it's actually helping people in ways that most lawyers don't get an opportunity to do. And that's when I met Jeffrey, and I joined his firm. That was about 17 or 18 years ago. And it's been very satisfying knowing how many children we're able to actually help. I'm on the panel to be a guardian ad litem, an attorney for the child,
Right.
or a child representative, all those three roles.
Let me tell people about what that is. A guardian ad litem is when, for example, two parents are in a divorce and there's custody battles and stuff. Somebody has to represent that child so that the child's rights are actually protected, rather than one parent saying, no, my child should be with me because of this, or the other attorney saying, no, my child should be with me because of this. The guardian ad litem takes the case of the child and examines both parents' situations, and they are the child's representative that says, well, after looking at both situations, I think that this is what should be, this is how the custody should be, this is how the visitation should be, and so on and so forth. And he does it on behalf, he or she does it on behalf of the child, him or herself, rather than on behalf of the parents and what they need. And how long have you been doing guardian ad litem work?
Probably for close to 15 years.
15 years, wow, 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 wow. Tell me something. Have there been any children, this is, since you mentioned this, I always want to know this. Is there any children that grew up, are now young adults and so on, that you took care of, that have come back to you and said, thank you so much for saving me, or for putting me in a situation that was safe for me, because if it wasn't for you, God knows what a judge would have decided on his own?
That does happen from time to time, and it's very helpful to me. It makes me feel very good that they remembered the work that I had done for them when they were children.
Yeah.
Because they've grown up now, and I think I may have had some help in offer them some help in that regard.
That's wonderful, 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 wonderful. Jeffrey, tell me, you have other associates too that work with you. Who are your main associates besides Art? We just mentioned Jim, right?
Jim Hagler and Art Kallow are the litigation directors of the firm. Jeff Washington is the managing attorney, and that's Jeffrey Washington is not only a litigator, matrimonial lawyer, certified public accountant, but he's just a real tough advocate, and he's a good person who we can all trust, very trustworthy. But there's a lot of lawyers in the firm, a lot of lawyers. But Art Kallow and Jim Hagler and Jeff Washington have strong leadership roles in the firm. And when Art stated he's been working as a guardian ad litem, that means that judges have appointed him. So judges respect him, and many judges have appointed Art Kallow as a guardian ad litem, and he's done great work protecting children.
That's awesome. So someone's walking down Michigan Avenue, and you're walking down Michigan Avenue, and you say, aren't you Jeffrey Leving, or aren't you the guy I see on TV, or aren't you that famous lawyer and stuff? And they say, I have a situation right now, I really need to talk to you. I've been thinking about trying to find you and get a hold of you. And you give them your card or however you do it, and they call you on the phone and they get. How do you decide which one of your associates or you yourself handle someone's case? How does that come about when that comes in? Is whoever's less busy? Is it the special circumstances of that case? How do you decide which of your very trusted associates or you handle a case yourselves, or do you work together on them?
It's a combination of all those matters. For instance, if somebody comes in and they speak Ukrainian or they speak Polish, we have Andrei Filipovich, who speaks Ukrainian and Polish and Spanish and other languages, and also he's a brilliant litigator and a brilliant appellate lawyer. So he could be very valuable in that aspect.
Sure.
Now, if somebody comes in and they want a great trial lawyer, I mean, we have great trial lawyers, but everybody has similar skill sets, but then sometimes they're a little different. Like Art's very unusual because he can try a case. He's a great trial lawyer, and I know it. I tried cases with him. I tried a case with him in Georgia. I handled a case with him in Los Angeles, California. He's a great trial lawyer, but also he is an appellate lawyer, which is unusual because those skill sets sometimes could be conflicting. Because to be a great appellate lawyer, you have to be very cerebral. You have to be really, really cerebral. But to be a great trial lawyer, you have to be able to think on your feet. And he could do both. Not every lawyer can do both. Then we have another lawyer, Michael Ochoa, who's a great trial lawyer, and his cousin used to be the president of Mexico, and he's a great trial lawyer. So we have different lawyers with various similar and different skill sets. So it depends. Somebody may come in and they may say, I want a specific lawyer. I want a lawyer who can speak Spanish. Well, then we want a lawyer that can speak Spanish.
Sure.
So it depends what they want.
Sure. You try to meet their needs, obviously. Does it ever come about that someone comes into your firm and you say, you know what, we just aren't able to handle your case. It just isn't for us. Do you find that people, because you are a specifics in your specialties, are there people that come in and it's a little bit off and you say, you know what, we really don't want to handle this case. We're gonna pass it on to someone else.
Well, we've done that, and we've referred cases out. For instance, we get calls for civil rights cases. We've gotten calls from clients that have complained they've been victims of abuse, they've been beaten up by the police, terrible things have happened to them, and we can handle those cases. Andrei Filipovich can handle those cases, and Art Kallow. But generally, we do have an attorney we can work co-counsel with or refer out to who works in that specific area. And same thing with medical negligence, catastrophic injury cases. Even though we can handle any case that comes in, we like to focus in matrimonial law, custody, international parental kidnapping cases.
Sure.
That's what, but we could handle other cases.
Tell me, you brought up international kidnapping. We know all the time. We see the alerts that come on the telephones and on the expressway signs and so on and so forth, and people kidnapping children and leaving the state, sometimes leaving the country, as you mentioned, and everything. How often do those cases come to you, and when they do, how often are you able to actually help solve them? And along with the police, obviously you have to work together with law enforcement. How often do those things actually get settled for the safety of the children?
We have a very good and successful track record. For instance, I helped reunite Elian Gonzalez with his father in Cuba. There's another case where a father came to us from Argentina whose child disappeared, and we utilized Detective Wayne Halleck. He's a very sharp detective, licensed private detective Wayne Halleck, and he helped locate the child, and I also used the media strategically to help identify the child, and we found out where the child was located. And that was a very, very tough case. We handled one case where our client's children were kidnapped and ended up in Egypt. So we've handled cases where children have ended up taken out of the country or brought into the country from other countries and concealed from our clients. One case I handled, I'll never forget, the father had a business in South America, and his business partner basically ran off with his wife and children. And I located his wife and business partner and children, and we tried that case. We tried that case right in Chicago.
Wow.
So but those are very, very time-intensive cases.
Sure.
It's not it's not a simple child support case. They're very, very complex, and especially if assets are being hidden in different countries, and you're trying to locate assets where you can have assets concealed in China or concealed in England. It becomes very complicated. Or Switzerland is even more likely. More likely than Switzerland.
Art, I want to ask you once again, not ever having you on the show before, what do you think was your very, very toughest case that you have handled since being in this business, and made you feel the best that you were able to be successful? What would be up there on that scale, and what would the situation have been?
There's one case that comes to mind that Jeff and I handled together. It involved a famous talk show host's grandson who was living with his child's mother. The grandson was living with the child's mother in California, and there were drugs being sold in the house. We were able to determine all this, and we flew out there, and while flying out there, we noticed that the grandmother, not our client, not the talk show hosts,
The other side of the family.
The other side of the family was using social media extremely recklessly, and she told on her website who the witnesses were going to be, what they were going to do, and as we got there, we could pick out the witnesses in waiting to get into the courtroom, and it made our job a little easier. It shows how careful you have to be with that. But we were successful, and the child came home on the next flight after us.
Wow.
So that was very gratifying.
Very cool.
And that case was much more complicated than Art is making it out to be, because we had to fly out to Los Angeles multiple times, multiple court dates. It was very complex, but the end result was we were successful, and we reunited the father with his child, and they're even together now.
So our viewers may be asking the same question that I might ask, and that is, you are licensed to practice law in Illinois. When you have a case in California like this, how does it work? Do you have to hire other attorneys in California who are licensed? Do you have to get a temporary license in California? How does that work that you're able to take care of a case in a California situation?
Basically, both of those things. We have local counsel that we find to be very reliable, and they sponsor us to get admitted to practice for that one case before the court. So Jeff and I each got admitted. It's called pro hac vice, which is Latin for this particular event, and we got admitted that way. And then we could practice law just like a local attorney could.
So cool.
One case.
So cool. So tell me something. Once that happens, is it a lot easier to get that to happen a second time if it happens again, because you have a reputation there with their courts for having been admitted before, or do you have to go through that whole process again?
We have to go through the process again, but it's easier because we've already been through it. They know who we are.
In California, that's
Yeah.
how it works in California.
Some states it might be harder. They like their local lawyers, but we've never been unsuccessful having the ability to be able to practice in another jurisdiction.
So I know, like, for example, for accountants, CPAs, they get licensed in a state, and they can apply, their degree is good, they can apply to be licensed in another state and go through a small process and get that done so they can practice in another state or something like that. Is it true with lawyers too? Is it just a matter of making an application and saying we wanna work in your state too, or do you have to go through some kind of addendum bar exam, or some kind of addendum of a application process where they look into you and test you and things like this before you're admitted? How does it work if you wanted to work in another
There is some
state?
reciprocity with some states, not all states, and they usually don't make it real easy to do that, but it is possible. Some states require that you sit for at least a portion of the bar exam. Some of them require that you have the whole bar exam. They all want to look into your background and make sure that you're kosher.
No, I understand. No, I understand completely. So tell me, like, in your opinion, Jeffrey, you know, what laws still need to be changed? Because I know you do a lot of going down into Springfield and talking to legislators. You know, we really need to do this, we really need to do that, and they respect you. You have a name behind you, you have a reputation behind you. What still needs to be changed that the lawmakers just are not moving towards?
In Illinois, we need a child support accountability law. We need a specific law in Illinois where if the child support is not being used appropriately by the custodial parent for the children, then the custodial parent must account to the court to show how the support is being used. For instance, if a custodial parent is getting $5,000 a month for child support and the children don't have winter coats, their hygiene is terrible, they're not getting food to eat, and in a situation like that, I'm concerned that if the money is going to the mother's new boyfriend, or the mother's using it for drugs or alcohol, a situation like that, I want an accounting, and I probably would want to recommend in a case like that my client seek a change of custody. But if the client doesn't want to seek a change of custody, at a minimum, we need a law requiring child support accountability to make sure the child support goes to the children, not to a drug dealer or to a boyfriend.
So I understand this completely, and as a certified chaplain, working in hospitals and hospice and so on and so forth, and going to people's homes and going to nursing homes and seeing situations, I meet families, and I find families where I see that the person is receiving a lot of child support, but that the money is being used by the parents. The money is being used by the parents for their own personal use. It's like, they say, well, you know, I'm not getting any alimony, so I'm using the child support. You know, it's not my place to report them, because you don't even know if it's ever going to be followed through with if you do make a report like that. But how can someone who sees this going on and these children suffering because the money that's been allotted to them is being used by the parents, even if it's not being used for drugs or things like that, it's being used for entertainment, for buying a new car, and doing things like that, rather than to take care of their children and buy new clothes and make sure that they're fed well, and so on and so forth.
It's a very sad situation, and that happens all too often, all too often. And in a situation like that, we need a law requiring child support accountability. But in the meantime, in a situation like that, I question, is the custodial parent capable of parenting?
Sure. Let me go to the other side of things. Let's go to what we call the deadbeat dads or the deadbeat moms, whichever it might be in the case. You know, a lot of times I meet single people, especially in the hospital. I meet single people who are raising their children and they're collecting 0 child support. And they've said they've tried, and he doesn't give me anything, and I've just given up. And they try and get the courts to take money from their paychecks to send them, and the person's unemployed. And there is no money coming in the paycheck, so is the person getting Medicaid or getting whatever they're getting to support them or not? Well, that money's not going to mom, who has these 3 kids and is in the hospital and is struggling even to have those kids taken care of while she's in the hospital. How does that get resolved? How do we get these moms who are not getting child support, or dads who have moms in the same situation? Mom was the breadwinner in the house, she's a professional, and dad's been taking care of the kids for years. They end up divorced, and dad's got nothing, and mom isn't giving them anything. How do we get these things taken care of?
First of all, the term deadbeat dad, to me personally, is offensive. I don't like the word deadbeat mom either. But the key is not using terms of insults, because in situations like that, there can be conflict already, so why throw gasoline on the fire?
Sure, absolutely.
But the real issue is, why isn't child support being paid? For instance, what if the father who isn't paying child support is deceased, disabled, hospitalized, or homeless? that person may not be capable of paying support. But what if the mother or father, whoever's in paying support, is capable and just isn't?
Right.
Well, in a situation like that, the court does have the powers to incarcerate if necessary. And there are courts that have incarcerated parents for not paying child support. But the key is if somebody can pay and they're not paying, then they should pay, or else pay the piper and risk going to jail. But what are you going to do if you have a parent that's deceased or disabled and can't work, can't function? What are you going to do? Put somebody in jail who's disabled, living on the streets?
Sure, of course.
That also doesn't help them earn money to pay the child support. So if they're going to be off work, that's not going to help anybody.
Sure.
But we've been very successful in keeping people out of jail and making sure that they still were able to pay their child support.
Do people come to you just to collect child support? Do you get clients that come to you guys just say, help me, I'm getting no child support. My ex-husband makes $100,000 a year. I make $10,000 a year and I'm getting no child support.
Well, that's not our typical case, but we do get calls like that frequently. Generally, we'll get calls related to children being abused or sexually abused,
Sure.
and the parent wants to protect the child. For instance, we received a call recently from a father whose 13-year-old child out of state was being badly beaten by the mother's boyfriend.
Oh.
Badly beaten, and when we looked into it, the mother's boyfriend claimed it was discipline. Well, you don't discipline a little girl by beating the pulp out of her. That's not how you discipline her. And I don't believe it was discipline. We went to court, won that case, and that little girl is safe now. And if that abuser ever comes near that little girl again, he's going to end up getting what he deserves. He's going to get locked up.
So my last question is, what about the mom or dad, it could go either way of course, what about the mom who's moved in with the boyfriend and the mom and the boyfriend have just absolutely, they still have joint custody, that isn't even in question, but they've brainwashed this child. And this child has lost their religion because they don't want anymore to go with their mom to synagogue or to church or wherever they go, or I want to observe Christmas and not Hanukkah because my dad gives me more presents, or whatever. My stepdad or whatever he is gives me more presents. How do you handle a case like that? How moms and dads suffer when the opposite parent has a new spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend in the house who's absolutely influencing the child away from what they were raised with?
Well, sometimes in a situation like that, a judge may appoint an attorney as a guardian ad litem to protect those children. And that's when the judge can appoint Art Kallow or somebody like him.
Yeah.
Because attorneys can be very valuable when courts appoint them in such a capacity.
Wonderful. All right, well, I want to thank you both for being on the show. We've run out of time, but it's really a pleasure to have you on again. Jeffrey Leving, Art, a pleasure to be with you, and I hope that we can do this again. Art Kallow and Jeffrey Leving, they are experts in father's rights, and on the opposite, when the father's the bad guy, on mother's rights too, they'll help you. They're great. I want to thank you for being with us. Remember, you can check out our website, www.tvrabbi.com, where you can also see former shows on the web, including Jeffrey on my show in the past. If you want to send them an email or us an email, info@tvrabbi.com is the email address. I will forward it to them, and I know they'll get back to you in person. Don't forget to check out all his books. Also, How to Be a Good Divorced Dad, Father's Rights, Divorce Wars, and there's great languages too. It's great to have you with us. Hope to see you all next time right here on Taped with Rabbi Doug. Shalom, everyone.
This has been a Taped with Rabbi Doug production.